Welcome back, everyone, to our third series on the revelation of mental illness behind the mask. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder, commonly known as manic depressive. According to WebMD, they're saying that maybe 10 million Americans suffer from bipolar. I personally feel that that is an underestimate. By me working firsthand in behavioral and psychiatric hospitals for nearly 30 years and working with families and children, there is a large segment that is unreported. Bipolar is an illness that affects all of us, and I know at least 1 out of every 3 Americans may have this disorder, but it has not been captured. For whatever reason. Could be due to socioeconomical issues or cultural factors. But let's begin with bipolar. Think of bipolar as 2 extreme opposite poles, and that's what bipolar is. It's self-explanatory in its own wording. Bipolar, you have 2 extreme poles. And in those extreme poles, it relates to mood, emotions, your psychomotor activity, meaning your physical activity, and our ability to thinking, our thoughts, making rational decisions from day to day. That is important in our daily functioning. Now, however, individuals who are diagnosed with bipolar or may not even know they have that diagnosis, their brain functions differently than someone who does not have the disorder. You will see a noticeable change in their moods, their behaviors, their thought process, and in some instances, their motor activity. Okay? So let's take the overactive, which I will call the manic phase. And then we have, on the other side, the underactivity, the depressive phase. So let's talk about the symptoms of manic. When someone is diagnosed with bipolar disorder during the manic phase, it normally lasts 4 days to 1 week, and it is noticeable because the person is not sleeping. They are excessively involved, whatever their goal-directed activity is. It could be exercising. It could be a buying spree. Their judgment is really impaired. They may take off on a plane and with nothing in mind, just go places, spending money lavishly. But those who suffer with the manic phase, again, it generally lasts 4 days to 1 week. Racing thoughts, the mood swings, that's unprovoked. And in many instances, those that suffer from bipolar are grandiose in their thinking, meaning they think that they're invincible, superhuman powers. They're just, nothing can stop them. And that's when in their manic phase. And that often lands them in a hospital. I remember one day with one of my sons who I described in the previous videos. He suffered from bipolar disorder, manic depressive with psychosis. And I thank God for this police officer. He gets it. So he called me. This is maybe 7 years ago. He said, "Ma'am, your son is," we stopped him. He was moving in and out of traffic on a moped, going at high speed. And they asked me, "What should I do?" I said, "I'm his mother, first, his mother, and I'm a psychotherapist." And I told them that my son is going through a manic phase. And often when you go through that manic phase, it's often exacerbated. That means heightened when you have some additional stressors in your life. I'll let you know about my son. He cooks, he cleans, he does everything for his children. And with lack of support from individuals, he does it all. And I think he was at that stress point. And sometimes when you're in that manic phase, in that stress point, you're just taking off. But that police officer, he asked me, "Ma'am, what should I do?" I said, "Please put him in the hospital because he's in a manic phase because of stressors in his life." And he did. They thought he was trying to kill himself on the moped. And actually, he was in a manic phase, and he was probably psychotic at that time, thinking he was invincible. He can do whatever he wants. But I truly give thanks to that police officer. I don't know who he was to that day, but he gets it. He must have had family members. Additional to the additional stressors, the individual bipolar may begin to develop psychotic symptoms, psychosis, like my son did, paranoia, delusions of grandeur. Delusions of grandeur meaning they're being followed or someone is after them. Again, they can have delusions of grandiose. Some believing they are a god or they have a likeness of God. But you have to remember, when they're in a manic phase, they are not thinking rationally. They are very impulsive. And again, they have increased goal direct activity. And it's not a bad thing for us to have goals in our life. We have to have goals in our life. However, people with bipolar disorder, they have an overindulgence in goal-related activities, such as going on buying sprees, returning items back and forth to the stores, compulsive gambling, sexual promiscuities, making foolish business investments. And these are individuals with college degrees, non-college degrees, business owners. They foolishly invest money in so many businesses, and at the end of the day, they're in debt or hiding this information from their spouse, what they're doing. And that's also very typical to your more higher socioeconomical status people, individuals with bipolar who does investments, and they're just not thinking rationally. So again, it doesn't discriminate. It goes all the way from the higher socio-economical class to the lower. And often individuals with the diagnosis of bipolar, they're genius, they're smart. But somehow they've gotten by in life because there was no formal diagnosis, there was no formal treatment. But let me tell you, these financial wizards, they also have a high rate of suicide. High rate of suicide. And it often leads to the opposite side of the pole. We talk about the mania. Let's talk about the depressive. So now we see the same individual who was all euphoric and happy for the last week and just spending money and just excessively exercising and doing these business ventures. Now here of a sudden, there's a noticeable change by their others and family members. They're in this inactive state on the other side of the pole. They're fatigued. There's loss of energy, feeling sad, hopeless. There are some that have lost their appetite, significant weight loss, insomnia, hypersomnia, nearly every day through this 2-week period cycle. Their ability to move around, to make decisions is just gone. They can't. Their ability to think, to concentrate, it's slowed tremendously down to the point that they can't. And these are when the suicide attempts occur too. At the manic state and at the depressive state. And let me tell you something too. A lot of people, bipolar disorder is being masked. And when I say masked, it's being masked by substance abuse behaviors. Because they did not get their bipolar diagnosis captured early in childhood or earlier adulthood. So what they've done, they've begun self-medicating. Heroin, alcohol, cocaine. But these individuals were never diagnosed. And they're given the primary diagnosis of substance abuse disorder, alcohol dependence, when that's not accurate. In order to be truly diagnosed with bipolar, which is hereditary, it has to be not attributable to a medical condition or substance abuse use. There must be an absence of substance abuse disorder and an absence of an attributable medical causing symptoms of bipolar. So this is how I knew my son was truly bipolar. Actually, it was at age 13. He wasn't using drugs. He didn't have a medical condition. That bipolar disorder is there. It doesn't go away. Now, a lot of individuals suffering from bipolar, whether they're aware that they have it or not, whether they've been diagnosed or misdiagnosed with depression, they do have a high rate of illicit substance abuse because they're self-medicating. They don't understand why they're feeling angry one minute and good the next. Why are they fighting one minute and nice the next? Oh yeah, I just want to bring this up. In adolescents and teenagers, there's a strong mood irritability. They can't even explain. I remember one child I was working with, and they said, I just don't understand why my mood is swifting back and forth. I don't get it, and it bothers me, and it makes me feel bad. There was issues with the parents that had issues of bipolar in the family. But again, nobody wants to talk about it. They want to hide behind the mask because of the stigma. But this child was really struggling. So the whole family had to come into counseling. Many individuals who has been misdiagnosed or not diagnosed with bipolar due to the lack of knowledge or not being aware that they may have do have a high percentage of self-medicating and suicide rates. Okay. And you got to be careful with the misdiagnosed. I remember in working in psychiatric and behavioral medicine for several years in institutions, I ran across a patient, and she was so dead sure. There's nothing wrong with me. I have no symptoms of bipolar and depressive. It's nothing wrong with me. Actually, and when you work in a psych hospital, you're going to say, yeah, that's what they all say. But she was right. Come to find out, she was admitted on a psychiatric unit. Come to find out, she was a diabetic. Didn't have any idea that she was a diabetic because you have to get medical clearance when you're on a psychiatric floor. That attributed to her mood disorder, why she was irritated with the whole family and everything. It was because she was a diabetic and she had no knowledge of it. Again, it's going to the lower socioeconomical class that doesn't get the help or the treatment they need, or getting away from the stigma is nothing wrong, but she was truly a diabetic. She had no history of mental health issues and was diagnosed bipolar. And that's why to be truly diagnosed with bipolar, you cannot have any substance abuse. You have to be clean of that, and no attributable attributes of any medical conditions. But she was correct. She went home happy, and she got her diabetes managed under control. She did not have bipolar. So you have to discern between the medical condition, the mental health condition, the substance abuse condition. You got to look at all three aspects to make that true diagnosis. And being a clinician I have for 28 years, I am very careful when making those diagnoses. You have to. But it's also important to note that bipolar symptoms can be moderate, mild, or severe. Okay, when I say mild, there's people that's getting by, they're functioning at work, they're doing everything, but there are symptoms that are mild, not that noticeable. Moderate, they're a little bit noticeable, a little bit. But when you severe with bipolar, which my son does have, one of my sons, with psychosis, and you can have severe bipolar without psychosis. Those are the ones that really I get very, very concerned about because they are at high risk for suicide deaths, and they are at high risk for substance abuse related behaviors. And how I treat my clients is very important to have talk therapy with them. Cognitive behavioral therapy, DBT, which is called dialectical behavioral therapy, and that kind of helps with those extreme moods. Medication management by a psychiatrist is a must. It's a must. Especially if you have bipolar in the severe rating. And DBT has been proven to be one of the most effective evidence-based practice for severe mood disorders, which teaches those with bipolar how to regulate those severe mood swings, the highs from the lows, through mindfulness techniques that I use throughout my private practice. So, and it's also important that family members get involved and the individual get more educated about bipolar. Because that 10 million that WebMD is saying, I'm not quite buying it. Because there are many people that's suffering out there and they just don't understand why they're suffering. Why am I depressed? Why am I going on all these spending sprees? Why am I making bad investments in all these businesses? Why am I hiding the money from my spouse? Okay, some of that may answer your questions. Get the help you need. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this segment, Living with the Bipolar Behind the Mask, the revelation of mental illness behind the mask. And please subscribe to my channel, Dr. Angie Miller. Thank you, and have a very blessed day.